Blue Antler is a liminal place. A place where knowledge lies in sun-filled meadows, and wisdom slumbers in the deepest shadows of the forest. Profound inner knowing comes when we touch the unknown. Our unions with the mysteries drive us onward. Our liminal conversations explore the lives of those who have touched the unknown. What was it like to experience the mysteries? How did they discover their path? Join my search for whispered secrets and hidden wisdom. Who knows? It may help you discover your path. Welcome back to this episode of Blue Antler Podcast, Whispered Secrets and Hidden Wisdom. Today's episode is an interview / conversation with my good friend Kelli. Kelli is known as the spiritual messenger of Source and Spirit. She is also my co-host for Psychic Medium, the podcast. If you're interested in that topic, head on over to wherever you find your podcasts, hopefully, and give it a listen. We've got 4 seasons under our belt there, and always have a good time doing it. Our conversation today dives into the backstory of how Kelli became the spiritual messenger of Source and Spirit, going into some of her very early childhood experiences, including drowning, and then really moves into and dives into family, how her psychic and spiritual gifts developed there, and then within her current family. We had a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, Kelli, the spiritual messenger of Source and Spirit. My first question for you is this. And it's because I know you and I know some of your history, but I would like to dig into that a little more. So you and I both know that a lot of psychic mediums have some sort of near-death or death experience that triggers, maybe is a good word, is a catalyst for opening up their psychic gifts or their awareness of the other and of the mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was yours?
Well, just your typical drowning. It's good.
Yeah.
No.
It's just, like everyday thing for everyone.
It's just a daily thing for me. Yeah, I was 5. And those people who oh, you're going to learn to swim by me just throwing you in the pool.
Yeah.
But then I forget I throw you in the pool when I leave you there, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
What happens when you mix, alcohol. And anyway. But yeah, I ended up in the deep end of the pool when I was 5 and had quite the experience. Had one of my uncles not seen me and, pulled me out, I wouldn't be here. But it was interesting. I remember the whole experience very clearly. It was the weirdest thing. It was like my body felt weightless. Like this, of course, you're in water, so you have that feeling too. But it was like completely weightless and warm. Like this warmth just moved through my body. And it wasn't like, the bright light, like a lot of people talk about. No, was there a light? Yes, this bright light, but it was more of like a glowing effect around me.
Yeah.
And I just remember hearing, you got work to do. You got to go back. And
At 5.
And I remember this so vividly.
Wow. You have work to do. And you're 5.
Yeah, I'm like, of course, then none of it made sense. It was like, oh, hey, I survived that. Great.
Yeah.
Which, if anyone's listened to you know, our other podcast, I talk about water a lot. Water's a big thing for me. I do have this big fear of water. And yes, that was probably a giant part of it, but also just previous lifetimes. I've had so many deaths with water. And so it was only fitting that I had to die in water this lifetime too. But
Hmm.
so, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Um, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, first of all, like that idea of being, of drowning, but then being 5 and distinctly remembering you must go back, you have work to do, and you're 5. It's like, like I joke, I don't joke about this. I actually pointed out for a purpose, but there are children who are in sweatshops, who that like who do have to use their little fingers to sew things, and we have no concept of that where we live, really, because it's just not something we experience, nor should it be, I think, something that anyone should experience. But um, to then be given such a directive as you have work to do,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember at all thinking like what does that mean? I mean, do you know where I'm going? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
did
Yeah.
you even think about what that meant?
At the time I didn't. I didn't. I think I was so
Yeah,
traumatized by the event itself
yeah,
that I didn't really put much thought into the words, even though they always rang out. Of course, when I was having a panic moment about it.
sure.
And I mean, still to this day, Chris teases me because sometimes if like a bunch of water gets in my face, even in the shower, is like I panic. I kind of hit this panic point, and so I have
Yeah,
to like, okay, I'm gonna wash my face. I'm not gonna die. I'm fine. And I have
yeah.
to, and I've done so much healing around it. But as a kid, hearing that, I really didn't take it in and in a sense of understanding, honestly, until I was in my early 20s.
Well, okay. So before we jump to your early 20s, did you have any other experiences? Or I'm sorry, let me maybe ask this. After the drowning, did you have experiences of like the unknown, or the things in the other world, things in the unseen that you needed, that maybe, and how did you make sense of them, if you did, as you were growing up, before you began to understand in your early 20s what that meant? What were your experiences like as a child and a teenager?
Yeah, so I had immediate experiences after that event.
Wow,
Even as
wow.
well, I mean, even as I remember laying there and kind of coming to, I could see people all around me, but there wasn't that many people at the pool. Do you know what I mean? So even then,
Yeah.
I was seeing like people that were there but not there. So even in
Yep.
that exact moment, I was seeing it. But ever since then, and I had a few experiences I can remember earlier than 5, like
Yeah.
spiritual pieces that had happened to me. But 5 is where my memories kind of really took off. I have a mind that can remember. I'm very I'm vision based, so I'm really good at remembering like visionary key points of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was a big one. And but after that, they were frequent. And it's hard to wrap this around your mind at 5, 6, 7 years old. In my mind, it was just normal. Like, oh, everybody can do this. It's just, oh, I just see things. And so I didn't understand that that was something different. So I didn't really talk about it because I just assumed everybody did it. But then,
Yeah. It
so
was
I
just
can
part of
see
your day to
things.
day.
Yeah, like my grandfather, who I'd never met, by the way, I'm named after him, but he died like years before I was even born. I think he had been gone like 8 years or something. But anyway, he would stand in the doorway of my bedroom at night. And
Wow.
I, in my mind, I'm like, oh, grandpa's here. Do you know what I mean? He just stood there. Um,
Yeah.
and I had many experiences. But then what really kind of kicked it into gear, and I realized that, oh, this really isn't something that everybody does. I was 7, and I was very close to my grandma and my papa. Like, they were my world. My grandma was my world for many, many years after that too. But um, I told my mom, I said, Papa's gonna die tomorrow. And she's like, "What? Why are you saying that?" And I'm like, I just knew it. Like, I seen it. I knew it, that my papa was gonna die tomorrow. And she was like, "Don't you ever say that again. Why would you even say that? What is wrong with you?" And I remember this conversation vividly. And I'm like, oh, she just like dulled my whole sparkle. Like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't talk about these things. And I started to realize then, like, oh, I'm kind of the weird kid. Like, I'm not going to talk about these things. So I started keeping things to myself. But anyway, lo and behold, my grandpa died the next day. Um, yeah,
Wow.
heart surgery. Yeah, died and open. Yeah, all, heart problem, everything. Anyway, so ever since then too, he would sit on the foot of my bed every day, every night. He sat on the foot of my bed. So I always had those experiences, and I would talk to him, and I would know things, and I could pick up on things. But I learned to keep it to myself. It wasn't accepted in my household. My mother thought I was evil, or something was wrong with me. And my dad had his own fair share of issues, so that wasn't something that was ever discussed. So I grew up
Yeah.
thinking something's wrong with me. So in my teens, I really had to suppress it in my early teens, and kind of like, I don't want my friends to think I'm weird and then have no friends, right? So I suppressed a lot of it.
Did you,
And
real quick,
mhm,
moving into your early teens, did you,
mhm,
did it, was it amplified by going through puberty?
absolutely, absolutely. So this is a
Okay.
good pause spot too. So um, the house that I grew up in, my parents built it, but my parents got divorced, and my mom married this other guy, and he loved to collect, all these antiques from places. And so our house was always full of antiques, and our basement, just these things that were down there just creeped me out. I had such a hard time going down there. Thank God my bedroom was upstairs. But anyway, things really started to amplify. And where I'm going with these objects is, it feels like even these objects amplified it even more, because some of them had some really not good energy attached to them. Um, and there was this mirror, and I'll never forget it. It was like a 6 foot tall, beautifully carved, ornate mirror. I mean, if I saw it now, I'd be like, oh, it's gorgeous. Back then, it terrified me, because it sat. So if I was in the laundry room and I turned, this giant mirror's right there. Like, you can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And I would see people walking through the mirror. Like, I could see like people just walking in and out of it, and they would walk through it. And then I would see these people walking up the stairs of our house, and they would walk all through the basement of our house. So I was terrified to go down there.
Yeah.
In the 6th grade, and this is where it really amplified, is puberty. And, it's about 6th grade. I was carrying a basket of laundry down the stairs. My sister was in the drive. My parents weren't home, but my sister was in the driveway washing her car. My other sister was around the house. But anyway, I'm about 4 or 5 stairs down, and something shoved me from behind, and it shoved me so hard that when I landed at the bottom of the stairs,
Oh, shit.
and couldn't. It took everything out of me. I actually was injured pretty good. But anyway, um, crawled up the stairs, and my sister saw the whole thing happen. And my mom's like, she tripped.
Really?
My mother's like, she tripped over the laundry. My sister's like, no, mom, she didn't trip. She flew down the stairs. Like, I saw something push her. So it was,
She was pushed.
yeah, I was violently shoved. And it was almost like in that moment, I was like, fuck, they can see me. Like, I knew I could see them, but it's like,
Yeah.
shit, they know about me too. And so then it started taking on a whole new
Wow.
dynamic. I had to learn how to protect myself really quickly on my own.
Yeah. Wow. Um, okay. I'm taking it all in, because some of this, you and I have known each other for years
Yeah.
now. And like you said, we have our other podcast, Psychic Medium, the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And I know like a lot of these, I know some of these stories. Let's go, I want to go back for just a
Okay.
second. I can imagine, not because I know your mom, but because I can I don't know, maybe I've watched enough TV to know that this is maybe how I think about it, or how TV reflects maybe reality
Mhm.
sometimes. But did your mother, do you remember if like over those first few days after your grandfather died, did she like completely ignore you, or was there some like sort of frustration and some sort of like weirdness around, oh my God, she knew he was going to die? What was that like? Did her treatment of you kind of harshen at that point and then kind of soften over time? Is like, what was that like? There's so many things running through my head about like how that could have been handled from a parent's perspective and like what it was like from your perspective. But what did happen those like those first, maybe that first month after he died, as far as your interaction with your mom?
Yeah, well, to give this some context, first you have to understand my mother. My mother is not nurturing.
We only have an
I know,
hour.
no,
Just kidding.
this is like
I'm sorry.
14
Just
therapy
kidding.
sessions deep. But I'll give you a quick thing. My mother is not nurturing. My mother is not understanding of anyone else's emotions but her own. My mother's a narcissist, okay? Plain and simple. So my mother completely ignored me. She didn't mention it. It wasn't talked about. But my mother treated me different from that day out. It was like she she was afraid of me, is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, I just that actually just like broke my heart. That is so fucking weird.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, sorry, I'm overwhelmed. Because to have that happen as a child, um, adding on to, you know, like how it all uh everything else that had already happened to you. Um, how did you begin? Where did you find like peace and safety?
Mm-hmm. My grandmother.
Yeah.
So, I'll tell you this part. And then also, the house that this happened in, all these things happened in, we had some horrible, dark other things happened for years before we left this house. But anyway, my mother and I'm sorry, my sisters and my grandmother raised me. I
Mm,
don't know where I would be. I mean, I'm the baby, I'm the youngest.
yeah.
And so my two older sisters got me ready for school, took care of me. My oldest sister was the one who made sure I had school clothes and did all those things.
Yeah.
So my sisters are pretty much the ones who I found comfort. And again, my grandmother, she was my existence. She was my whole world. She was more of a mother to me than my mother ever was.
Yeah. Wow. Um, now
Mm-hmm.
moving into your teen years, you started to mention like you definitely didn't want to be the weird one, um,
Mm-hmm.
especially with friends. I would like to get into that a little bit, but was there a religion at that point for you and for like for your family, and how did that kind of play into these experiences that you were having, or did it even have any influence?
Well, I was raised LDS. Um, Not because my mother or father ever attended church. I would go with all the neighbor kids because
That's what you do.
you'd never find my dad studying for in church. I think they're burned down.
uh,
But um, I can hear his spirit over here laughing. Like he's just
Laughing,
like.
yeah.
Mhm. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I went with the neighbor kids, baptized all that, and then so my mother, anytime something would, these things would happen with me, she's like, of course, here comes the bishop for a blessing, and here comes, this bishop or this priest to come do a blessing on the house because it's evil. It's evil because of me, or it's evil because of whatever, her drunk boyfriend drags home or whatever, So it was always she. My mother's never taken accountability for like anything. So it was easier for
Yeah.
her to use religion to like, well, this couldn't be happening because of this. You know what I mean? It must be something evil. And Kelly probably brought it in. So
Yeah.
that's where the religion came in, was more. And for me, in a crazy way, the religion and going to church with the neighbors was like a safe haven for me.
Yeah.
Now I'm going, it wasn't a safe haven, that was an illusion, but it gave me some place that I found some peace within myself because I didn't understand what was going on with myself.
Yeah. Let's fast forward now to your 20s, your early 20s, when you began to understand, like, what were the moments when you, or what was the time like in your life when you began to understand what that the phrase "you have work to do" meant?
Yeah, so kind of like my late teens, my gifts, they were always there. They popped up, always at the time I needed them, or in weird moments. So my gifts became almost like a party trick. Oh, guess what? Watch what I can do, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that's where they should stay forever. But in my early 20s, I started having a lot of medical problems, and a lot of things that doctors just couldn't figure it out. My left hand, 3 fingers on my left hand were numb for almost 2 years with no rhyme or reason.
Wow.
Yeah. So, this is in my early 20s. I was 21 when this started. And so, couldn't figure it out. And, so they're like, oh, you have MS. Oh, no, it's all right. Oh, it's this. All these weird diagnoses that nothing ever stuck. But anyway, long story short, my grandmother came to me because she passed when I was 19. And so she came to me and she said, are you done? And I'm like, done what? What do you mean I'm done? And she said, are you done ignoring yourself? And my grandmother was gifted. My dad actually was gifted as well. He didn't use it, but my grandmother was gifted. And she said, are you done? Are you done ignoring yourself? Are you done, blocking yourself? And in that moment, everything hit me. And I'm like, oh, that's what this is. I've ignored myself. I have put myself on a shelf for way too long. And it had caused a lot of turmoil in my life. And I mean, backing up a quick step though, I married young. It was easier than being home. That kind of gives us some context. So,
Yeah.
and my first husband didn't approve of any of this. He's like, you don't talk about it. You won't use it. None of that's real. You won't embarrass me in front of my friends. That was a big piece. And so even then I'm like, okay, I don't use this.
Wow.
But we got divorced and around this time, and I started finding myself. I accepted it that day. I'm like, you know what? Okay, you're right. You're right, Grams. I'm gonna own this. And I shit you not, the very next morning, I had feeling in my hands again.
Really?
The very next morning. It was insane. Just like gone. And later I discovered what that was, is if you realize our left side is our receiving side.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blocking myself from receiving. I had shut it so tight that nothing was coming in. So it was starting to affect my left side. Yeah. And so I had all these health problems all on the left side of my body.
Wow.
And yeah. And the crazy thing is, the second I'm like, you know what? I accept myself. I will, I just told myself, okay, I'm ready. I'll dig into this. I'll find myself again. Everything released. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. That was that.
Yeah.
But in that moment, everything clicked. It just clicked. And I started to validate myself. I started to accept myself as who I am and what I am. And then I met Chris just a couple years later, and he is the reason I do everything I do today, by the way.
Yeah.
He is the one that encouraged me, like, no, you need to use this. This is beautiful. This is a piece of you. This is, you need to accept all of this. So I'm like, and so it really does say something, that being supported in your spiritual journey is important.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you cannot do it if you have a partner that doesn't understand you. But I will tell you, it's much easier when you have a partner like I do that is like completely encouraging of it, and he still helps me better myself and do all the things. So I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my husband, but he really helped me to see everything that I was having a hard time seeing. But
Wow.
I just started digging back in and started, opening my abilities. And I'm self-taught. I didn't have mentors and I didn't have people that I could go to, because in my mind still I'm like, oh, I gotta keep it to myself, right?
Yep.
I'll do this, but I'm gonna keep it to myself. And so it wasn't, a couple years later when I started really, I'm like, okay, this is okay to share. And then it was crazy. People just, I would give messages and people would find me, and then
Yeah.
everything started just growing, and here I am.
Um, there are so many places I want to go with this. But first, your party tricks. Um, I find that when you said that, I thought, oh shit, yeah, that's true. Because when I was in college, um, I would, I would hold someone's hand, and I would be able to kind of see their future partner. Because of course, being LDS and going to college at Snow College, and the 99% of my friends were LDS. It was like that was our biggest focus, right? It was yes, college, but getting married or going on a mission or whatever was the other one. So every time I would hold on to one of my friends that was a female, their hand, and be like, okay, I see him, and I could too, which was weird as fuck, but it just is one of those little party trick things. But what would, because we're gonna lighten this up for a second, what was your party trick? Like what was the thing that you did that people were like, because clearly it wasn't like, I don't know, hand headstand on a keg. That was not, that
No.
was no, that wasn't your party trick. But what was like the psychic party trick you used to do that you were famous for?
Yeah, it would be little things like I'd be like, hey, you got a baby coming next August. And then here comes this, these little things would come true. But it was also like little blips of like, so your grandma Betty's here. And I would just give these little pieces to people and kind of like, it was little hushed pieces, or,
Yeah.
quiet corner talk kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Or, or I'd say things like, "Oh, are you starting a new job next week?" And they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." And it was just, I just knew things, and it was just these little blurps kind of a thing that would come to me. These little
Yeah.
pieces of information, these little blips, and I would just share them, and it was like those little, just like enough to let myself open
Hmm.
without, you know, divulging too much about me.
I feel like you and I spoke about this briefly on one of the episodes in this last season of Psychic Medium, the podcast. But when you were talking about that, I almost felt like how it was, I can't remember which episode, like maybe 420, 421, where we talked about, I mentioned that our grandmothers did it but didn't talk about it. Our
Mm-hmm.
parents didn't do it or talk about it, and now we want to do it and talk about it. And
Yep.
I feel like that is probably part of the beginning of opening up these gifts, are those hushed, like we're sitting in the corner and talking, and you just say something because you see it based upon your ability to see the world, but it's not a seen thing that you're
Mm-hmm.
expressing, right? So, wow. Okay. Whispered Secrets, Hidden Wisdom, by the way. We have a name for a reason. Um, um, do you remember we came up with the name of your autobiography?
Oh yes,
Um, um,
which I still need to write.
yes, because you have so much time on your hands. Um,
Yeah.
uh, it's
Um,
called
you want
Your
me to tell
Camp.
you?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Big hair and beer cans.
That's right. Okay, okay. Thank you. Now, you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, I love this. Yes, I know you're going.
So,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about your grandma. When she passed, because she was one of the ones who was your safety, um, was there a period of, what was that like, one? And two, how long was it before you really started communicating with her as a spirit on the other side?
So I was pregnant with my daughter when my grandma died, and um, it was the weirdest thing. I just knew. I knew in that moment that I was not only having a girl, but a piece of my grandma would find its way to her. So I
Oh, wow.
knew, yeah, so I knew in that moment. It was just like, I can't explain how I knew it, but I knew it. So I feel like my grandmother spoke to me in that way immediately. But I feel like I've never stopped communicating with my grandma. Like I've never stopped. It's just it just transitions from her being alive to her being gone. It's like I've never stopped communicating.
Okay.
So she's always been. I guess the biggest word is safe.
Yeah.
But my grandmother loved me like just unconditionally, and just she was just the best person ever. And this is my dad's mom. Um, and she was just always the one that would protect us kids, that would take care of us. And so there was always that connection. But more than that, her and I just had a soul bond. It was special.
Yeah.
And so I mean, immediately after she left, I knew she was okay, and she was talking to me probably same day with the pregnancy, but the next day in conversations. So, but I grew up mainly at my grandmother's house. Like I pretty much, I was there more than home. So her house was, where I was at most of the time.
Yeah.
So it was easy.
Um,
It was easy to communicate with.
which is nice because you and I have talked about this. The car wash after people die,
You get a little spiritual car wash.
the little spiritual car wash, which you came up with, and I fucking love it because I think it's I actually use it all the time now when I'm trying to describe to people like the process of after you die, and uh
Mm-hmm.
so it was good that it was good that like her car wash went kind of quickly. um um
Yeah, she needed it.
yeah, well, oh Lord, who doesn't? um
Yeah, my grandmother was best described as hell on wheels.
which is a very good description of you
Oh,
as
you're not
well.
wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah, my grandmother was hell on wheels, and she was feisty, and she didn't take anyone's shit. And to just kind of give a quick, my grandmother, this was the type of woman she was. She worked at the Five and Dime when I was really little, and some kid tried stealing a pair of Levi Strauss, and she's like, "You're gonna put those down." She cocks the shotgun. She goes, "You're gonna put those down, or I'm gonna pull the trigger." Well, the kid didn't put him down, so she blew a hole in the roof of the Five and Dime.
Uh-uh.
Oh
Oh.
yeah, kid dropped the pants. She got the pants back, but she blew a hole in the ceiling. So that's my grandma.
Oh my God.
She's an amazing woman, though, like an amazing woman. And but yeah, she would where the beer cans coming in, kind of going back to we started that topic and we didn't finish it.
Thank you. I was
Is
gonna ask.
okay, yes, yes, yes. So my
Yeah.
grandmother would go. We would go. She'd pick me up from school, and she'd throw me in the back seat, and she drove like a batted hell. So seatbelts? What are seatbelts? So here's me sliding across the seat of the vinyl seat of her car, winging around corners. And we would go, and she would buy 2 cans of Coors and a can of 7 Up. And we'd go home, and she'd, pour her beer in a cup, pour my 7 Up in a cup, and we'd sit at the table. Well, if she had extra beer, she would hide it in the dryer, because then my papa would never find it, because he don't look in the dryer. He don't do laundry.
Right.
So
No.
she would hide her. She would hide the beer in the dryer. so
I love
So
that.
she would have, yep. So she would have her beers, and I would have my 7 Up. And So it's always something funny. It's always been my grandpa. It's
I love that so much.
the beer cans. Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to go here. When did you, sorry to your children, and you can totally not answer this if you want. When did you start seeing the gift manifest in them? Or did
And my
you?
kids?
I'm assuming, yeah, because I'm assuming because of how it travels in your
Mm-hmm.
family line. But what did, okay, couple questions wrapped up in this. How old were you, and where were you at with your development of this when you saw it happen in them, and how did that affect how you were working with your own gift?
Okay, I love this. So, I saw it in my own children very quickly, especially, okay, so, quick rundown. I have 4 children. Um, 2 are with my first husband, and then Chris had 2 kids. He was a single dad, a single mom. But anyway, when we got together, I adopted his 2. So I have 4 children. So my first 2, and you'd never know. I mean, you'd never know they're not mine. But the first, I take that back. They are mine in every which way, but you would never know they weren't biologically mine.
Right.
But my oldest 2, my oldest one, with Dylan, I knew right away. Dylan, like I said, I got married young, had a baby young. I needed to be on my own, and so Dylan and I pretty much grew up together in a lot of ways. But I always knew Dylan had that gift. Dylan had that component. He would show little pieces of it, but it took him a lot longer to stand into his power. He really didn't start really recognizing his intuition and his gifts until he had a child of his own.
Oh,
So,
really?
mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
okay.
he was 20. Let's see, Dylan was 23 when my grandson was born. So
Yeah.
that's when he really started knowing his intuition. And my grandson, oh my gosh, that little boy is so intuitive. He'll come to my
Yeah.
house and go, Uma, who's the man at the end of the hall? Like, he sees him clear as day.
Yeah.
So yeah, my little
Wow.
grandson, very gifted. And then, Shelby, she highly intuitive too. She chooses, she's always been intuitive. Probably I seen her start to really bloom when she was about 10, moving into puberty more and more. But then when she
Yeah.
hit her early 20s, she really started becoming very intuitive, and she's got a really great sense of intuition and psychic senses. So she's 20, almost 27 next week. So she still uses it, but she doesn't like to talk about it. She doesn't make it known. It's kind of like we don't talk about Bruno, kind of like that. She just keeps it to
Yeah.
herself. I'm fine with that. That's her sacredness.
Yeah.
But then my younger 2, it was crazy. Even when I met Chris, he was like, uh, we were talking about our spirituality and how we were in things, and he would say to me, he goes, our daughter Keisha, he would say, yeah, she finishes my sentences. She literally will come up to me and say, I'll do that, Daddy. And he goes, I didn't even ask you yet. She goes, yeah, you want me to dust? Like, she would know these things before he would even say it. So
Wow.
she's, highly intuitive as
Wow.
well. And she was that way from day one. And then so I adopted them when they were 4 and 5. So I've had them since they were 3 and 4, but adopted them at 4 and 5. But
Yeah.
anyway, our youngest, he actually has Asperger's syndrome. He was diagnosed when he was 6. But even then, he had a lot of, anyone who has an Asperger child understands that concept. But my youngest is probably my most powerful child spiritually.
Wow. I
Kyle's
can see that.
brilliant. Like he can
Yeah.
tap into spirit, and he can walk with most amazing, you know, amazing, I've watched him have some amazing conversations with Tyr. He communicates with Tyr quite a bit, and he moves through things. But anyway, he's got an amazing gift.
Yeah.
So all of my children are gifted, um, just very differently.
So, we'll go with Shelby. When her gifts began to really emerge at puberty, where were you at in your journey with developing your own gifts and working with, and not developing, I shouldn't say that, um, accepting and then exploring maybe and discovering what you were capable of from more than a party trick
Yeah,
standpoint?
yeah.
Where were you at, and how did seeing her do it, what did that do for you?
Okay, so when Shelby started recognizing her abilities, I was already deep in the thick of using mine. Mine were
Okay.
open by then. They were, they were activated. They were there, and
Yeah.
so I was still perfecting it, still growing. We're never done growing. We're still learning. We're still anyone
No.
who thinks they've learned it all, they don't know anything. So I was still growing, but watching my children awaken themselves helped me to fully awaken myself, because I seen that what, it is okay. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
This is acceptable. This is so good for them and so good for me. And so my children helped me grow. They still help me grow. My children still teach me beautiful lessons. But
Yeah.
and so the same with my younger two. I was already, kind of in it. Dylan, my oldest, is the one who he I learned to activate it. Let's see, Shelby. I started stepping into it when Shelby was 3, so Dylan would have been 5. So Dylan is probably the one more that grew as I grew through it. So he kind of grew
Yeah.
with me through my
Okay.
awakening. But my other kids, I
Wow.
was already pretty much in the thick of it before
There.
they opened theirs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Um, so, I have a couple places I want to go. Um, I would like, and I don't know the timeline of these two things, but I know that I think they happened kind of around each other. I'm gonna fast forward you to now. You've done all this. You're an interior designer as well, and in that point,
Mm-hmm.
at this point in time, and now you're stepping into more fully doing this as a business and doing it as a primary source of
Mm-hmm.
income. Now, um, I would like to, because I um I mm, I think I would like everyone listening to understand that sometimes, mm, just because we're connected doesn't mean we're always making like uh the the most aligned decisions, right? Like it just like
I know everybody's always like, "You must have everything figured out," and I'm over here going, "The fuck, I do. I'm winging it. I'm winging it, bitch. We got this." But no.
uh, well, it's a human experience. So okay, I would like to know what your experience was like, and how did working with um, Ghost Adventures on a couple of their episodes, how, because I don't know, I just think that's an interesting uh, experience for
Mm-hmm.
you, and like because now it's like, oh, I'm in the past I died, and I'm that whole thing. Just kidding. That
Yeah,
was a big deal. But
just
you
died.
died, and then my grandpa's dying tomorrow. You're doing party tricks. You now, into your 20s. I now have feeling back in my fingers, and then you begin to develop all this
Mhm.
stuff. Then, like, fast forward several years, and you're on Ghost Adventures. So, like, I know I've skipped some, and I'm sure we'll actually in a different episode, come back to that. But, like, what was that like? Now, like, what was it like touching the
Mhm.
unknown and on TV?
So
You know what I mean? Like, that's weird. That's a
it,
whole other component that
yes,
just adds complexity to
yes,
it.
it definitely does. So um, I will say first of all, it's crazy. Don't get me wrong. I love what I do. I'm blessed to do what I do. But I didn't choose this career. It chose me. It chose me.
Yeah,
I went from,
yeah,
just, reading people here and there, just, having my gift for myself. And then word of mouth caught on. And before I knew it, I was so busy. I had to go, well, this is my full time job now. And so it evolved, everything evolved very quickly, very, very quickly for me. But I love doing paranormal work. We've talked about this before. I love me a good ghost hunt. I love to help spirit. I love to understand spirit. So
yeah,
I worked with, a paranormal team and I was part of the team. We would do these, different things. And on one of the locations, friends of mine owned a restaurant that we had done a whole bunch of work with our own paranormal team in this location. And we caught
yeah,
some amazing things. I mean, when you've got a spirit box clearly stating my first and last name through that's pretty impressive. And so
yeah.
Ghost Adventures. I can't even remember now how it's been so many years. I mean, it feels like forever. I think this was like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I did this work. I don't remember. Anyway, um, they somehow got the information from our paranormal team through one of their connections. And anyway, so they contacted us, um, me and the rest of them, to see if we'd be willing to be on the show. So I will tell you, the day that producer called me, I was like, what? Wait, what? It was a little bit of that crazy. Okay, all right. So
Yeah,
agreed. I
yeah.
agreed to do the show, and was able to tap into it. And it was. I will say it was an interesting experience. Um, Fun. Something that you could. I can say I did it. Would I do it again? No, I wouldn't.
Why?
Because you realize, especially when you're in it firsthand, how much of the story gets twisted, turned, and extorted. And
Yeah.
what
It's
it
TV.
is, and
It's
people need to
TV.
realize that doesn't mean the story wasn't real. That doesn't mean the events didn't happen. It doesn't mean it wasn't. It
Right.
was a quite a terrifying. This is where the demon was, and it was actually
Yeah.
quite an amazing thing. But like when the recording, like my voice, I'm like, I didn't say that. They like cut and edited my like what I said. I'm like going, well, that's just bullshit.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Don't get me wrong. It was a great experience. I loved working with them. They were really fun. I will say Aaron is a card. He was my favorite. He's just like this quick, crazy, eccentric, just fun person. Um, I'm sorry, Zach fans. He was not my favorite. Sorry.
Yeah.
He was not enjoyable to work with.
I get that.
Yeah. The rest of the team, great.
I get that.
But anyway, um,
Wow.
do I feel like it was an experience I needed to have? Absolutely. Would I do it again? No. I have found much more joy working, doing my own paranormal work or working with groups too. And we have talked about this many times, and I'll be brief on this. I really have a hard time with paranormal teams or paranormal investigators that taunt and demand and scream. And, spirits are not circus animals. They do, they do not perform for you. They are, this was somebody's mother. This was somebody's child. This was, would you
Yes.
treat your mother on the other side like that? So I have a really hard time seeing what I see and feeling what I feel to those investigators that taunt and torment the dead. I have a really hard time with that. And it's really against my core values. And so those were the moments I'm like, you know what? This isn't who I am. And this is not something I want to be a part of.
I get that. I for sure get that. Okay, here's my other thing I wanted to touch on. And like I said, you never have to answer a single question, and it's okay. You at a certain point had a partner in reading.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of sometimes we'll talk about that being like tarot or something like that's a tool that helps us connect and helps us kind of interpret messages and things. I've been to one of the episodes in this series is with Jennifer Martin, who does gallery readings with Elle, a friend of ours. So I've watched that. I've been to their gallery reading because I wanted to see how it worked for them. I love watching people's gifts work because I don't know how else to explain it other than I can watch it work, which is fascinating to me. But so I get like they would toss it back and forth between each other during the reading. What led you to getting to having a partnership with somebody who you read with? What was that like? And then how did that nothing is forever, and they're all phases of time and our life. What was that like, and how did that I guess why did you need it, and then you no longer needed it and it ended? But what was that like? Because I've never really read with anybody in a partnership.
Well, it was a learning experience and it was shit, but so
I don't think I actually know the whole
so
story, and not that we need to go into it, but
no, I'll give the quick rundown. So I was already doing my thing. I was already doing readings. I was already doing everything I did. And Shelby had a good friend who her mom was a psychic medium. So we started talking and and she did have a gift. She did have a gift. And she's like, gosh, we should do this together. And at that point in time, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let's give it a whirl. What is it going to hurt? I still did my own thing too. But we would do groups together or we would do shared sessions. And it was supposed to be that pass it off, right? Like, I'll get what I get, you get kind of a thing. But I learned very quickly that that's not how it worked. So it was all, I'm doing all the work, I'm getting it all. And then she would chime in and go, oh, yeah, that's what I got too. And I started to realize, okay. And then I realized that was a problem. And then she would start making up things. And we would start getting and this just like, even right now, I want to shake my head and go, what the fuck was I thinking? But she would we still joke about it, still a joke in our family. I'm like, oh, did your grandma like to bake cookies? Because that's some of the shit that she would fucking say to people. Oh, did your grandma like to can? Whose grandma didn't can? Or your grandma had this favorite recipe. I don't know what it is, but there's this favorite recipe. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Like, this is the bullshit you're throwing out.
Yeah.
So I started having a harder time with it. And then we got noticed by a really big talent agent, honestly. And he wanted to, I gave him some amazing readings. And And he even flat out said to me, a little bit further in their experience, he goes, yeah, you're the talent, but she's the face. And she's this beautiful little, gorgeous body, perfect little thing. And I'm like, I'm not going to be someone's talent while she's the face. Like, fuck this. But anyway.
Well, first of all, you're beautiful. And
thank you.
There is absolutely no fucking way that needed to ever be a question. So
right?
Fuck that.
Yeah. So that was a component of it. But anyway, but I started realizing like I am doing all the work and she's getting, kind of the glory off of it. But anyway, this guy wanted us to basically, he wanted to make me the next, kind of Teresa Caputo, to put it out there. He wanted me to start doing celebrity readings and big readings for big people. And he had all the contacts. And it was feeling great, but it wasn't feeling great at the same time. Everything in my body was like, I can't do this. So one day I came home, I talked to Chris. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. This is not what I want. It's not who I am. And I feel like I'm selling a piece of my soul to the devil in a sense. Like I can't do this. So I went to him and I said, look, I am dissolving this partnership. It's not working. It's, and she would just, and the stuff she was making up and she lost her gift, because if you don't treat your gift with respect, if you don't be honest, and if you don't be really forthcoming and really be true to yourself, trust me, that shit will shut down. And so
three numb fingers later.
Right. And it got to the point that she was just creating all these things. I'm like, I can't be a part of this. I can't be a part of the untruths. And, I'm trying to live my life to its best and to its, to speak my truth and to really be the best person I can be. And, I had gone through some of my own shit and I wanted to be a better person, and we all grow, right? And so I said to him, I said, look, I can't do this. So either if you want to work with just me, great, let's talk. But if not, I'm out. And he's like, well, no, I can't do that. I need her. She's the face of it. I said, I wish you the best of luck. Have a great day. And I walked. Yeah. And it's crazy. She doesn't do readings, hasn't done readings since all of that. She, flopped. And he reached out to me. It's crazy. Last year, he reached out to me and he's like, oh, yeah, I don't think I told you this.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he reached out to me and he's like, Kelli, how are you doing? I'm seeing your name come up, and I'm seeing all these things. And I'm like, I'm doing amazing. And he's like, oh my gosh, I am really regretting. I really am sorry. We really should have taken this a different direction back then. I'm like, yeah, you did mess up. He's like, do you want to try it again? I'm like, no, I'm good.
No,
I'm good. Thank you. No. But no, thank you. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like,
wow.
Yeah. So, but that felt really good to say no. I'm like, no, I don't need anyone to help me. I'm good.
I will say right now, I know you have clients who are A-list celebrities, and there is no need for you to now just give him a portion of the money that you're making because he's not going to help that. He's not going to help it. You're there.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Fuck him.
Yeah. He's like, we could charge $2,000 a session for you or more. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm golden.
I'm happy. I'm content.
Oh my God.
I've created a life that I love and I get to help, and I'm good here. So thank you anyway. So that was really empowering for me. Yeah. Like, no, I got here on my own things,
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing your more of like the backstory. I really like the backstory about like how you got to where you are and some of the things that really, I think people think it's easy, but it's taken a lifetime of work to get to where you are. Yeah. So thank you so much for hanging out with me and sharing this with me. So I love you and I appreciate you so much. And thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I love you very much too. You're my brother. So I always love having experiences with you. And when we're ready to do big hair and beer cans, you're a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm down. I'm down. So down.
Well,
Yeah.
most people don't know this, so the little quick clip here is I love myself some big
Yeah.
hair. Big hair and me are just
Yep.
yeah. Tati actually calls me Jersey Wells, so that's my nickname. If anyone didn't know that.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and that all has to do with big hair.
Yep.
And tying it up.
Yeah, and where I'm
tying it
from.
up in
Yep.
big buns.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and because you're Welsh, yes.
Yep. I always say the bigger the
All
hair,
right.
the closer to spirits. I got this. See?
Well, and you're not the tallest person,
No.
so it does help.
No.
Good thing your connection's solid.
No, I'm like a little toy. I'm like a little toadstool. I'm like short and squatty. It's fine.
Oh, I
Need
love
me
it.
some height.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, wasn't that a very interesting conversation? I know you want to hear more, and probably one day we will go into it much deeper. But for now, if you'd like to know more, you can always head on over, subscribe, and like, and hit all the following notification things, and listen to Psychic Medium, the podcast. I hope you got so much out of this episode and are inspired to do a little wandering of your own today, looking for, discovering, knowing, and following your path. Thank you for listening to Blue Antler, Whispered Secrets, and Hidden Wisdom, a Discover Your Path podcast.